Book of Heaven, Volume 21, Part 1. JMJ, Fiat. February 23rd, 1927. How the living in the divine will is to form a surprise visit to Jesus. I felt my poor heart under a press, so very hard, because of the privation of my sweet Jesus. Oh, how I moaned and agonized, and praying my usual round in the creation in order to follow the acts of his will in it. As I arrived in the sea, I called him and said to him, "My Jesus, come back. Your little daughter is calling you in the sea. I call you together with the vastness of these waters, with their murmuring. I call you in the darting of the fish. I call you with the power of your own will that extends within this sea. If you do not want to listen to my voice that calls you, listen to the many innocent voices being unleashed from this sea that are calling you. Oh, please, don't make me struggle any longer, for I can take no more." But no, with all the voices of the sea, Jesus would not come. Therefore I had to move into the sun, and I called him in the sun. I called him with the immensity of its light. So wherever I went, I called him in the name of each created thing, and of his very will that dominated within them. Then, as I arrived under the azure vault of the heavens, I said to him, "Here, O Jesus, I am bringing you all your works. Don't you hear the voice of all the heavens, the innumerable voices of the stars that call you? They all want to surround you and make you a visit as their Creator and Father. And you? Do you want to send us all back?" Now, while I was saying this, my sweet Jesus came out, and placing himself as though in the middle of all his works, told me, "My daughter, what a beautiful surprise you gave me today. You brought me all my works to visit me. I feel my glory, my happiness, being redoubled in seeing myself surrounded by all my works that I recognize as many children of mine. Today you have acted like a son who loves his father very much, and who knows that he greatly enjoys when he sees himself surrounded and visited by all his children. This son calls them all, one by one. He gathers them all together, brothers and sisters, and he goes to give his surprise to his father, who enjoys in seeing himself surrounded by all his children. Not one of them is missing. He recognizes all the members of his family. Oh, how he feels glorified by all his children. His happiness is at the summit, and as the fulfillment of his joy, he prepares a sumptuous banquet, and all together, father and children, they celebrate. But in the fullness of his happiness, he recognizes the son who has gathered his whole family to give a surprise to the father and to make him enjoy so much. This son shall be loved more, because he has been the cause of such great happiness for him. Now, my little daughter, while you were calling me in the sea with all its voices, I listened to you and I said, let her make her round through all created things, that she may gather them all together for me, and then I shall let myself be found. In this way, I shall be able to receive the visit of all my works that are like as many children of mine, and so they shall make me happy, and I shall make them happy. Therefore, the living in my will contains indescribable surprises. I can say that wherever it reigns, the soul becomes my happiness, my joy, my glory. And I prepare for her the banquet of its knowledges, so that making each other happy, we extend the kingdom of the supreme Fiat, that it may be known, loved, and glorified. Therefore, I expect often these surprises of my little daughter, who brings me the visit of the whole family that belongs to me. Moreover, since all our divine qualities are as though spread in the creation, and each created thing occupies one office of our attributes, so one is the child of our power, another of justice, one of light, another of peace, another of goodness. In sum, each created thing is the child of each one of our attributes. When you bring me the whole creation, you are the bearer of my happiness that is spread within it. And I recognize my child of light in the sun, my child of justice in the sea, that of my empire in the wind, that of peace in the flowery earth. In sum, in all created things, I recognize each birth from my attributes, and I enjoy in recognizing my children, whom the little daughter of my will brings to me. I act just like a father who has many children, and each of them occupies an office of honor. One is prince, another is judge, one is deputy, another senator, another governor. The father feels happier in recognizing, in the birth that came out of his inmost self, each office and height of honor of his children. And since all created things were made so they would serve to make the children of the supreme Fiat happy, in seeing you bringing our works back to us, we recognize in you our purpose. And oh, how we enjoy in seeing you make your round to reunite all our works together in order to bring back to us our own happiness spread in the whole creation. Therefore, let your flight in my will be continuous. Then, after this, having received Holy Communion, I was saying to my beloved Jesus, my love and my life, your will has the virtue of multiplying your life for as many beings as exist and shall exist on the earth. And I, in your will, want to form as many Jesuses in order to give the whole of you to each soul of purgatory, to each blessed of heaven, and to each being living on earth. Now, while I was saying this, my celestial Jesus told me, my daughter, in the one who lives in my volition, my will does precisely this. It multiplies the acts of the soul by its own virtue for as many as are the created beings. The soul receives the divine attitude, and her act becomes act of all. The divine operating is precisely this. One act that it does multiplies itself into many, such that all can make that act their own, as if it had been done for each being, while the act was one. So the soul in whom my will reigns places herself in the condition of God himself, both of glory and of sorrow, depending on whether creatures receive it or reject it. The glory because her act can bring the good and the life of Jesus to all is great, exuberant, infinite. The sorrow because not all creatures take that good, and because my very life remains suspended without bringing the benefit of my divine life, is sorrow that surpasses all sorrows. February 26, 1927. Wherever the divine will reigns, it forms 3 little chords of most pure gold. How the divine will makes its exposition in the whole creation. My lovable Jesus makes me struggle very much for his return. Oh, how my little soul longs for him, reduced without him, to be like earth without water and without sun, such that while I burn with thirst, the darkness is so great that I do not know where to move my step in order to find he who alone can give the water that quenches my thirst, and who makes the sun rise for me, that gives light to my steps. To find he who moves away from me. Oh, Jesus, Jesus, come back. Don't you feel my heartbeat in yours that calls you? And having no more vital humor, palpitates with difficulty, and has no more strength to call you? But while I was saying this and other things, my highest good, Jesus, moved in my interior, and showed 3 little cords that, tied together, all 3 of them, were tied in the depth of my soul. These cords were descending from heaven, and were linked to 3 bells. Jesus was a little child, and with a grace that cannot be described, and all in a haste, he took the little cords in his tiny little hands and pulled them strongly, but so much that it seemed that those bells formed a peal so loud in heaven that the whole of heaven would come out to see who it was that was sounding with such haste and might as to call the attention of all heaven. I too remained stupefied, and my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, the soul in whom my will reigns has little cords of most pure gold that descend from the power of the Father, from the wisdom of I, the Son, from the love of the Holy Spirit. As she operates, loves, prays, suffers, I take the little cords in my hands, and I put our power, wisdom, and love in motion for the good and the glory of all the blessed and of all creatures. The sound of these bells is so loud and harmonious as to call everyone, like a sound of invitation to celebrate. This is why all came out to enjoy the feast of your act. So, as you see, the acts of the soul in whom my will reigns are formed in heaven, in the womb of her Creator. They descend upon earth through the three chords of our power, wisdom, and love, and ascend again to their source to bring back the glory due to us. And I delight very much in pulling these chords, so as to make everyone hear the sound of these mysterious bells. Then after this, having heard of the exposition of the most holy sacrament that was done in the church, I thought to myself, for me there are neither expositions nor services. And my sweet Jesus, giving me no time to think about anything else, came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, for you there is no need of exposition, because the one who does my will has the greater and more continuous exposition that my will displays in the whole creation. Even more, since each created thing is animated by it, it forms innumerable expositions for as many things as exist. Who forms my divine life in the Eucharist? My will. If the sacramental host were not animated by my supreme will, the divine life would not exist in it. It would be a simple white host that would not deserve the adoration of the faithful. Now, my daughter, my will makes its exposition in the sun, and just as my will has the veils of the host that conceal my life, so does it have the veils of the light that conceal it in the sun. Yet who makes a genuflection? Who sends a kiss of adoration? Who says a thank you to my will exposed in the sun? No one. What ingratitude! And yet, in spite of this, it does not stop. It is always stable in doing good. Within its veils of light, it follows the steps of man. It invests his actions. Whatever path he may take, its light makes itself found in front of him and behind him, carrying him as though in triumph within its womb of light, in order to do good to him, disposed to do good to him and to give him light, even if he did not want it. O will of mine, how invincible, lovable, admirable you are, immutable in good, untiring, without ever drawing back. See the great difference between the exposition of the Eucharist and that which my will itself makes, in a continuous act, in created things. In that of the Eucharist, man must put himself out. He has to go himself, draw near it, and dispose himself to receive the good. Otherwise he receives nothing. On the other hand, in the exposition of my will in created things, it is my will that goes to man, that puts itself out. And even if he is not disposed, my will gives in abundance and drowns him with its goods. Yet there is no one who adores my eternal will in its many expositions. It makes its exposition in the sea, and while in the sun, symbol of the Eucharist, it gives its light, its heat, it gives innumerable goods, but always in silence, It never says a word. It never gives a reproach, no matter how many horrendous evils it may see. In the sea, instead, in the veils of the water, it makes its exposition in a different way. It seems to speak while forming its murmuring within the veils of the water. It strikes fear in its tumultuous billows and in the roaring waves, such that, if it invests ships and people, it buries them in the depth of the sea, and no one can resist it. My will in the sea makes the exposition of its power, and speaks in the murmuring. It speaks in the billows. It speaks in the gigantic waves, calling man to love it and to fear it. And in seeing itself not listened to, it makes the exposition of divine justice, and changing those veils into storm, it hurls itself at man inexorably. Oh, if creatures paid attention to all the expositions that my will makes in the whole creation, they should remain always in the act of adoration, to adore my will exposed in the flowery fields, in which it spreads its fragrances, in the trees loaded with fruits, in which it spreads the variety of its sweetnesses. There is not one created thing in which it does not make its divine and special exposition. And since creatures do not pay to it the due honors, it is your task to maintain the perpetual adoration of the expositions that the supreme Fiat makes in the whole creation. You, my daughter, are the one who offers herself as the perpetual adorer of this will, with no adorer and no requital of love on the part of creatures. March 3rd, 1927. The creature in whom the divine will reigns calls God to operate together with her, and gives him the glory of that very happiness with which he invested the human acts. The offering of one's actions to God purifies them and disinfects them. I was offering my little acts as homage of adoration and of love to the supreme volition, and I thought to myself, but is it really true that whatever the soul who does the divine will does, God himself does? What glory can he receive, after I have offered to him my little work and everything I may do, from coming to do it together with me? And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, don't you feel me within you as I follow your acts? Indeed, wherever my will reigns, all things, even the most little and natural, convert into delight for me and for the creature, because they are the effect of a divine will reigning in her, that cannot issue from itself even a shadow of unhappiness. Even more, you must know that in creation, our supreme Fiat established all the human acts, investing them with delight, with joy, and with happiness. So, work itself was to be of no burden for man, nor give him a shadow of tiredness, because by possessing my will, he possessed the strength that never tires and never fails. See, created things also are symbol of this. Does the sun perhaps tire of always giving its light? Certainly not. Does the sea tire of murmuring continuously, of forming its waves, of nourishing and multiplying its fish? Certainly not. Do the heavens tire of remaining always stretched out, or the earth of flowering? Certainly not. But why do they not get tired? Because in them there is the power of the divine Fiat that has the strength that is never exhausted. Therefore, all the human acts enter the order of all created things, and all of them receive the mark of happiness. The work, the food, the sleep, the word, the gaze, the step, everything. Now, as long as man remained in our will, he remained holy and healthy, full of vigor and of untiring strength, capable of enjoying the happiness of his acts, and of delighting he who gave him so much happiness. As soon as he withdrew from it, he fell ill, and lost the happiness, the untiring strength, the capacity, and the taste to enjoy the happiness of his acts that the divine will had invested with so much love. This happens also between the one who is healthy and one who is sick. The first enjoys the food, works with more energy, takes pleasure in amusing himself, in strolling around, in chatting. One who is sick feels disgust for food, feels no strength to work, is bored by amusements. Chatting bothers him. Everything is bad for him. The sickness has changed his nature, his acts, into pains. Now, suppose that the sick person returned to the vigor of his health, his strengths, his taste, everything would be restored in him. So going out of my will has been the cause of his illness. Returning into it and letting it reign shall be the cause of the return of the order of happiness into the human acts, and of letting it take its attitude in the acts of the creature. And as she offers her work, the food she takes, and everything she does, from within those human acts, is unleashed the happiness that was placed in those acts by my will, and it rises to her Creator to give him the glory of his own happiness. This is why the creature in whom my will reigns not only calls me to operate together with her, but gives me the honor, the glory of that very happiness with which we invested the human acts. And even if the creature should not possess all the fullness of the unity of the light of my will, as long as she offers her acts to her Creator as homage and adorations, since she is the one who is sick, not God, God receives the glory of the happiness of her human acts. Imagine a sick person who did some work or took a food of his and gave it to someone who is healthy. The one who enjoys the fullness of health perceives nothing, neither the tiredness of that work, nor the hardship that the sick person experienced in doing it, nor the disgust for that food that the sick person would have felt had he taken it. On the contrary, in the fullness of his health, He enjoys the good, the glory, and the happiness which that work shall bring to him. And he enjoys the food which has been offered to him. In the same way, the offering of one's actions purifies, disinfects the human actions, and God receives the glory due to him. And in return, he makes new graces descend upon the creature who offers her actions to him. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 21, Part 1. Fiat.